Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Brothers and sisters across the world, and especially to the great land of the United States of America, welcome to Liberty RoundTable Live. Hard-hitting news starts now. James Edwards, thepoliticalcesspool.org, will be the co-host for today. We're going to talk about RIP Michael Reagan. We're going to talk about the governor of Puerto Rico. House Democrats are in the news, and Obamacare, if you will. U.S. seizes Russian tanker, but is it really Russian? A federal judge allowing lawsuits to proceed AJR. And Governor Ron DeSantis in the news for a very cool reason. We'll break it all down just for you. Welcome to the show. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. Well, I got to say, R.I.P., rest in peace, my dear friend. Michael Reagan passed away, 80 years old. Cancer got him. He died in L.A. on Sunday, and our prayers are with his family. And the reason that it's so important to me, it's kind of amazing, you know, Ronald Reagan was very popular, as everybody knows, as president and everything else, but Michael Reagan, his son, was quite popular as a talk show host back in the day. And I heard the mainstream press news earlier this morning, and they put it kind of the last story. I caught it right at the end. I'm like, wait, well, what? And I had to go look it up. So it's not really prominently promoted, in my opinion, like it should be. But I kind of cut my teeth listening to folks like Rush Limbaugh, Ronald Reagan, Jerry Hughes, G. Gordon Liddy, all the kind of old school talk hosts. And that's kind of where I learned talk radio, really. I learned how to tease the audience before breaks. I learned how to kind of walk a fine line on some stories. You know, especially if, you know, like conservatives and the discussion of whether we should be going after Venezuela or if the president had authority to do so, you know, that's a fine line. Conservatives are split on that thing. Charlie Kirk discussions, you know, folks are split on those things. And so you got to learn to kind of walk some lines sometimes and be very careful. Yes, you want to tell the truth and be a truth teller, but you also got to be a little bit sensitive to people who have strong feelings either way for certain, in most cases, justifiable reasons. So anyway, R.I.P. to dear Michael Reagan. James Edwards, welcome back, sir. Did you ever listen to Michael Reagan?
I did not, Sam. And before I address Michael Reagan, I'll just say very quickly that, of course, you and I were together 1 week ago today, which feels like a lifetime ago. It was New Year's Eve 7 days ago. And think of how much has changed in the world with Trump now apparently ready to take over the entirety of the Western Hemisphere. Tim Walz is no longer going to be the governor of Minnesota. Rampant Somalian fraud up there. I mean, so much has happened to kick off 2026. A week ago, we were sort of putting 2025 to bed, looking forward to this year, and now, I mean, just a year's worth of happenings have occurred
in the thick of it, as they
in a couple of days. Boy, are we not? And then, of course, this news with Michael Reagan. Although I didn't listen to him, you know, it's astonishing to hear you sort of break down the fact that he was 80. I mean, okay, yeah. So I was born in 1980. When Ronald Reagan was president, and so now I'm 45, and it really does just seem like the blink of an eye where Michael Reagan would have been the age I am now, and I would have been a little boy, and his father would have been president, and it doesn't seem all that long ago. And then now I was astonished to hear that he had died at 80. It just doesn't seem like any of that should be possible, but yet time marches on, and you know, it'll come for all of us.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of a kinship story to Michael Reagan, too, because it wasn't really Ronald's son. They adopted him. And so, you know, when I say it wasn't really his son, it was because he raised him. But I don't mean it that way. I just mean he had a...
But that goes back to your story. Yeah, I get it.
That goes back to my story. So it's kind of interesting, and I really had a lot of respect for him, though. He was a good talk show host. He was syndicated on a lot of stations, and I used to listen to him and Roger Fredenberg and G. Gordon Liddy and Jerry Hughes and Chuck Harder and Rush Limbaugh and all the people back in the day and stuff. Anyway, just fascinating kind of historical reality. But anyway, he was a great guy. He, for the most part, followed in his father's footsteps. I would say he was a little bit more even conservative than Ronald himself was, though.
Well, I mean, you know, Ronald does have a sort of reputation for being a little more hardcore to the right than he actually was. There's no doubt about that. But nevertheless, anytime something like this happens...
cut your teeth in Hollywood and you're as conservative as he was, that's something back in the day, that's for sure.
Well, and of course, it's all relative. As generations and decades change, the viewing of one person in their time changes, and of course that's just the way it works. But nevertheless, when an occasion like this happens, it does, you know, you take pause and sort of reflect and take a look at how things have changed. And,
yeah, it won't be very
and how
long, and
things
they'll say
must move
Sam
on.
Bushman, 85 years old, kicks the butt, whatever the deal.
100%.
His
I was
bucket's
talking
been
to a friend.
kicked, and then it'll be James's turn, and there you go. The way of all the earth, right?
Well, I was talking to a friend last night that I grew up with. He's a mechanic, and I took my car into the dealership, and these dealerships they're sort of like the Somali gangs up in Michigan, or excuse me, Minnesota.
Yeah, they'll fleece
Well,
you for all
anyways,
you got, won't they?
Oh my! I got a quote that I just couldn't even. I almost choked, and so anyway, I called him. He's actually an airline mechanic for
Yeah, I
FedEx
want my
here in
redneck
Memphis.
buddy
I mean,
to go to the junkyard and find me a couple of pieces and put this thing back
100%. Well, I called him, and I hadn't talked to him in a few years. Once you start having kids and everything, you talk to people, when you have to, and rather than when you want to. But I was just, he and I grew up together, and it was just, man, we're in our mid 40s now. Our kids are, 16 and 20, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, man, I just had my 10th grandkid, so there you go, James.
Hey, and you're just getting started on that. I can assure you. You may have triple-digit grandkids by the time. If your family is prolific as you are, you're going to be pushing 100. And Kurt, I'm sure, no doubt, the great Kurt Crosby is between you and him. There's a village there.
That's right.
A
and
town,
we're trying
really.
to make sure that, hey, if we have a bunch of babies and all the liberals don't, then pretty soon there won't be near as much influence from them as there will be from us. And that's what we're looking forward to, brother.
I said that even the last week we were on. I mean, the left, the anti-Christ, anti-American, anti-family left reproduces through the public education system. And if we can, rein that in and continue to keep our quiver full as the Lord instructs us to do, I do believe it will be social conservatives and Christian fundamentalists, and I don't use that as a bad term, but it will be our people that that have a chance to take the world back in the future, because we will be alive, and the people who embrace the culture of death won't be. I mean, that is a very significant thing that people need to be thinking about.
Well, the Puerto Ricans, believe it or not, the territory of Puerto Rico, or whatever you want to call that, or whatever, they're thinking like-minded, James. This is very interesting. Headline says, Governor of Puerto Rico signs law recognizing that life begins at conception. Very interesting headline. They go on. In one of the strongest pro-life actions in a U.S. jurisdiction, the governor says that the preborn children are, listen, legally recognized as natural persons in Puerto Rico now, affirming that life begins at conception. In late December, I guess it's Governor Jennifer Gonzalez, Caron, I think is how you say it. Anyway, hyphenated names or whatever. But they basically amended Puerto Rico's civil code to recognize unborn babies as real people. Every human being is a natural person. At any conceived child at any stage of gestation within the mother's womb. Anyway, the Spanish newspaper that wrote about this basically said, hey, rather than radical, the law reflects the reality, the evidence-based fact that it is a person and is life. By naming that reality directly, clearly, Puerto Rico chose honesty over ambiguity. Anyway, all I'm telling you is what a story from the Puerto Ricans, James.
It's counterintuitive in some ways because in the United States, minorities, if you will, or non-whites are always more to the left than the traditional heritage American population, if you will. But in their own lands, you do see this. And all I can say is congratulations to the Puerto Ricans. Even in African nations, they are much more socially conservative on things such as homosexuality and transgenderism than the United States is, and that is to their credit. I applaud them for that. And I'll give you a good contrast, Sam, that was just in the news yesterday as well, while Puerto Rico is doing the right thing on this issue. Up in Wyoming, scarlet red Wyoming, politically, you had, once again, surprise, surprise, a judge that threw out their laws basically on abortion in the state, basically reverting it back to, you can have abortions again. So you can look that story up, but that's basically what happened. And so, again, it's an interesting thing to compare what's going on in places like Puerto Rico and even Africa on these social issues like life and traditional gender roles and marriage and things like that versus what you've got up here in God's country.
Well, most of the races of the world are pro-children. They realize that God said multiply and replenish the earth, and they know that has not been rescinded.
That's
It
100%
seems like
right.
the white people in the United States, especially liberal white people, they don't believe in having any children. They're the only group that has fallen for this lie that the earth is overpopulated and we don't have enough food and all this other bogus stuff.
Yeah,
God
other
biblically says, hey, there's plenty of room and plenty to spare, and he'll take care of his children. When we get back, you can respond, James. I just want to give you a
Sure.
chance to have a straight runway. Hang tight, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching the one and only Liberty Roundtable live.
And welcome back to Sam Bushman's Liberty Roundtable, now in its third decade plus of, very nearly, we right there, Sam, 25 years ago. I mean, 25-year anniversary was a few years back, and so we're
5
pushing
years ago,
30.
buddy, just so you know, little
So we're at 30.
years, buddy.
It
Yes,
all
sir.
blends, it all blurs, and that's another thing that seems like yesterday. You had a big time event for that one, just a ton of fun. But no, I didn't have a lot to say really in response to what you were saying before about how whites were really the only people that have been bamboozled into believing that in order to save the world, we have to kill ourselves. Nobody else believes that. And whites have only been the ones gullible enough to drink that Kool-Aid. I mean, you do see it a little bit, maybe, in some of the Asian nations, China and Japan, they have, a cap on how many kids you can have, and that's just another
that's
whole
not by
level
the
of
people's
sickness.
choice.
But
That's by their government force. And that's
Yeah,
a whole
that's right,
different
that's
discussion.
right.
See, the people would love to have children, and oftentimes they do have extra children if they can sneak away or get away with it or whatever else and stuff like that. I've talked to the people in China and Japan and some of these places, and it's government forced, not people driven. Whereas in the United States, hey, there's no reason you can't have more kids except for people have been taught this lie that, hey, you know what, the world's going to implode. You can't bring a kid here. It's such a horrible environment. Don't you dare bring one of God's precious children here. And they fall for this lie, and I don't know why we fall for that. I mean, it amazes me. Every race, logically would want to have children and want to raise them in righteousness and goodly behavior and thoughts and beliefs and actions. And uh, it's amazing to me that we don't really get that. We kind of think somehow there's this world view, this science view, or this educational view. The more educated they seem to be, also the more that they seem to be against, having a bunch of children or bringing children
Yeah.
into the world. It's amazing to me because you would think education would do just the opposite, but that proves the education is nothing but propaganda in most cases as well.
Well, there is a thing called overeducation when people become so self-important and smart in their own minds that they become really functionally disabled. And I mean, even an animal has the instinct to procreate. And
And I even,
th-
I
this
even say
was
to people too, James, by the way, when people kind of have that view and there kind of starts to be an opposition, I usually just kind of shut my mouth and walk away because they're not ready to listen. But I kind of walk away thinking, I'm glad I'm kind of dumb, I'm not as smart as they are.
well, it's going to be the so-called dumb people that survive. I mean, and listen. I mean, Pat Buchanan wrote the book about it in the early 2000s, The Death of the West. And if you are truly concerned about so-called climate change, as a lot of these overeducated people are, do you believe that people, and I don't say this jokingly or mockingly, but it is, frankly, the truth, people who haven't even mastered the concept of the wheel yet, and that they're going to be the ones that solve any sort of intricate scientific concerns? That's not going to happen. And so if you are concerned about that, the people who have the ability to tackle things in advanced science and technological realms are going to have to survive. And of course, we know, according to the bell curve and IQ, I mean, we know that there are people that are smarter than. Anyway, everybody deserves to survive. But if you're worried about those things, I don't think you want to leave the world to people who are in the developing, states. So.
Well,
That's
they
a
have less
concern.
opportunity. They have less resources. They have, so, hey, we can hopefully bring the world along in many great ways. That's part of the benefit of the free market or the free enterprise system as well, is that, we have the ability to produce and think and adjust. And, hey, when Ben Franklin taught us very succinctly that, hey, plenty of failures isn't failure. It's just hey, we know what doesn't work now, and eventually we gain success, right?
Well, here it is, bottom line. All of that's true. But this is an absolute fact that upwards of 97, 98% of all inventions have come from Europeans, and i.e. that means whites. And so, yeah, you're going to have a
Christian
problem
whites,
there.
Let's be clear, too. It's Christianity that really gives you God's guidance, right?
By and large, I mean, the age of exploration, the Renaissance, there is definitely a correlation there. And by the way, as whites in Europe have begun to separate themselves from the faith, at a time, Europe was synonymous with Christianity. The faith is Europe, and Europe is the faith. Europe, another word for Europe was Christendom. But as we have begun to depart from the faith, our decline has been precipitous. And this again goes back to Buchanan's book. There is not one Western nation, not one white nation that has above fertility, that has a replacement level that's above fertility, above 2.0. Not one in the world is even at 2.0. It's all 1 point something.
Yeah,
and you just
gotta have
extrapolate that
2
long
point- I
enough
think
and
it
you're going
is
to go
3
extinct.
or something like that per, to replace yourselves, because you can't just have 2 people to replace 2 people. People die and people get sick and people can't procreate for different reasons. And so you got to have more than just 2, or you can't even replace yourself. I'm glad you're above replacement levels, James. Good for you, buddy.
Yeah, well, I couldn't get the 2.3 without getting the whole, so we went for 3, and we should have had a lot more. But
There's
you and
still
Kurt
time,
can
James.
only.
You're still a young man, my friend.
Well, yeah, well,
I
that's one
understand.
thing about men. We can keep going forever, I guess, on it. But no, thankfully, but you and Kurt can't subsidize all of the slackers out there. You can't make up for entire nations, but I sure wish we had more like you.
House Democrats, along with some, I don't know what you call it, some Republicans, they may now pass the largest expansion of Obamacare funding history within the next 24 hours, James. They're at it hard. They want to use a discharge petition to bypass Mike Johnson. And they say this is with no voter consent, with no congressional approval. They're just, shanghaiing the system. They say they plan to vote on H.R. 1834 or 1834. There's also another one, H.Res. 780. I guess they say it could expand taxpayer funding of Obamacare through the end of 2028, I guess. So they're going to just try to push that through. There's Republicans that are dissenters is the problem on this thing. They say this action includes, and they name a bunch of representatives and a bunch of different people and all that kind of stuff. And I look at this and I just go, look, we were told we had, control of the House, the Senate, the courts, the White House, the Republicans did. And now we're being threatened by this. So when it's equivalent to a filibuster, we do a discharge petition, circumvent the majority. They say they're 2 votes shy from stopping this from happening. One congressional rep passed away. God rest their souls. Our prayers are with their families. And then the other one is green. Green's out. So Donald Trump almost chopped his nose off this time, despite his face, James, because now it's going to come back, if we're not very careful, to haunt us.
Yeah, I saw that she was down. Yes, you did have the representative. I wasn't familiar with him, but I did see the headline. I believe he was out in California, so he passed away. And, of course, that trims the almost non-existent razor's edge margin that the Republicans hold in the House down even further. And then, of course, I saw Marjorie Taylor Greene in her last days in Congress. She was down literally in Costa Rica with her fiance. She's getting married again. And she was sipping some boat drink by a pool. I mean, that's what's going on there. And so what exactly is this provision supposed to do?
It's going to fund Obamacare, buddy. Just bring Obamacare back.
The health
Bring
care.
back government health care. Yes, sir.
All right. So, all right.
So you don't
all right.
have
Now
Green
we
to stop it now because she's the enemy, supposedly, right? See, this is where I think we oftentimes, we want someone to be 100% pure Donald. And if you're not, then you're the bad guy. And we've got to stop that mentality. We've got to kind of say, look, we don't agree with Green on everything. We don't agree with Donald on everything. We don't agree with Sam on everything, but we agree on enough to work together and produce meaningful solutions.
All right.
And this is where I kind of think we've kind of stepped off the edge here, James.
All right, couple of things on this. I mean, one thing on Trump, although I am generally in favor of him, and I think he's done a lot of things. He's advanced this in so many ways that no other president would do. But one flaw that he absolutely has is this demand that everybody be in his cult of personality and be 100%ers. That's why he aligns himself with truly some of the most grotesque people imaginable, just because they are entirely sycophantic. And one example would be Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is probably, certainly high in the running for the most horrible senator in the country on either side. Oh, there's no doubt about it. But because there is some disagreement, there's some pushback. They're not just entirely subservient. They don't just entirely, fawn. Yeah. So, I mean, so he brings in people like this that are anathema to his vision, really.
He's literally attacking Massey and Green while he goes ahead and hangs out with Mondani.
See, all of that. If you give him praise and adulation, you can be in the club. Whereas if you are somebody who actually agrees with his vision for the country and are working to move it forward, not just trying to curry his favor and wait him out like somebody like Graham, then you get jettisoned, and that is a problem. But the thing with Obamacare,
and the reason I bring it up right now, though, is because if we're not very careful, Obamacare is going to get reinstated because we don't have the mojo.
But here's the problem with that, Sam, is what I don't understand is, and we were talking about health insurance last year and how it's become unaffordable, and especially once they took away the Obamacare subsidies, you had to renew by December the 15th or 16th to be on insurance.
So hold on. These people are gods, James. And so all they got to do is just say we've just extended the window and we brought back Obamacare, and when are you going to sign up, James? Right?
Well, we'll see what happens. If this passes, we'll see.
A window of healthcare is a congressional creation in the first place. You should be able to sign up and leave and adjust your plan anytime in the world you want to. But these clowns have this little window every, right after Christmas.
We got to talk about this
and kind of thing, right?
And I hated having to get on it because we talked about this last week. We need to spend another minute or two, if you have the time, Sam, on this, because this is
talk about Obamacare for a couple of more minutes.
It's a big story.
We're also going to talk about U.S. seizes a Russian tanker. But is it really Russian? It's Venezuelan. It's rebranded because of the Venezuelan-Russian partnership. But we've now seized this tanker. It's going to up the ante. Are we headed towards war? I pray the answer is clearly no. But I'm very concerned. Hopefully you're concerned as well. This is not an attack on anybody. It's just an observation, right? It's an observation. And for a guy who wants peace and follows the Prince of Peace, this is dear to my heart. I don't like war. I get that defensive measures are necessary, but we need to be super cautious. Remember how I talked about walking that tightrope as a talk host? This is one of them times, right? Hang tight. Liberty RoundTable Live.
Welcome back, everybody, once again to another blistering episode of Liberty Roundtable. LibertyRoundtable.com. Sam Bushman, the host, the founder of the Liberty News Radio Network, and he's got his hands in so many pies these days, I can't even keep up with him. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine the amount of stamina it takes to do all of the different projects, all of the different organizations he works with. And by the way, don't you know, he has a very big event coming up this weekend. There is still time. If you're out near the network headquarters in Utah, you don't have to go too far to the northwest to be able to meet Sam this weekend, and General Michael Flynn and Sheriff Richard Mack. And Sam can give you more information about that, but it's coming up quick, just a couple of days from now if you're listening live. But we were talking about healthcare, and I said this again last week on the show, Sam, the show we did here
by the way, we're almost sold out, too. The room's about to be just too packed. So
cool. I am so glad to hear that.
And you can sign up now, but I'm telling you better be quick because we're filling the room. It's at a church. A pastor kicks it off with prayer and, hey, Christian values through the whole conference. But I'm telling you, CSPOA.org. Sign up and get involved today, James.
That is such great news. That was an update, ladies and gentlemen, that I wasn't even aware of yet, that the sellout is imminent, and, certainly it should be. For that particular cause, that particular message with those particular speakers. These are some heavy hitters. And to have the opportunity to share in a collegial gathering with men like this and to brainstorm and network, it's just really something everybody should try to be at, if at all possible. This is how ambitious Sam is. This thing's in 48 hours. He's still adding people. And not only trying to add people, but adding, Jesse Lee and I go back way back. I usually talk to Jesse about once a year still, and he and I were on CNN together for, this was back in 2007, talking about time that flies and years that pass. 2007.
Jesse,
Well, I gotta say, I saw a certain congressman wearing one of Jesse Lee's T-shirts. I won't mention who, but
why not? Come on,
Jesse. I gotta send you the because I was he was sent to me privately, so I don't want I don't know if I have the liberty to share it publicly.
If you're afraid to back Jesse, I want to talk to you. I'll talk to Jesse.
No,
great guy.
Well, no. The shirt read "July just feels white." Celebrate White History Month, and this
Jesse
was
Lee
this
Peterson's
is
shirt.
That is Jesse Lee Peterson's shirt. Absolutely, that's why I mentioned it. But yeah, Jesse Lee is the one who.
Well, because he always makes fun of Black History Month, and he says July is White History Month, and he's right.
No, I understand. And Jesse,
I'm
of
fine
course,
with
is Black
History Month and White History Month, James.
Yeah, except one exists and one doesn't.
Jesse says it does, so I believe him.
Well, I mean, Jesse's getting it started. The very black Jesse Lee Peterson, native of Alabama, has gotten it started, and it's catching on. We certainly celebrate it, but he's got merchandise, and nevertheless, I'll send you this picture, though, Sam.
Right,
but it's. Jesse and I, we're getting way off healthcare. See, I mean, this is one of the things I love about live radio. You can have segments like this that are just total, just a total riff, just total organic and spontaneous, and would be the best thing we do today. But 2007, very quickly, Jesse and I were on CNN together, prime time, 8:00 Eastern. We were up in New York in the studio for a full hour talking about segregation, and Jesse and I were there to defend it's called self-segregation, as opposed to forced integration.
Well, it's called free association, my friend.
Well, that's another word for it, indeed. And Jesse and I, it was a panel discussion. Jesse and I were on the team arguing in its favor or for the merits for it. Paul Azan was the moderator. It was their biggest show at the time on CNN.
Although
and then there was
a
two
very,
other
very, very unfavorable moderator, but I'm with you.
And then we had the two opponents. So it was me and three blacks debating segregation. But Jesse was on my side, and Jesse's more white than most whites, but never, at least in terms of his.
He just understands the truth, which is hey. Each race should advocate for themselves. If they don't, they're an idiot.
100%.
Right? Every race should do that. And the only
problem everybody's got group
with
interests.
Our society is everybody can do that except for white people, and that's the problem that we're having, and that's the problem Jesse has too. Jesse always talks about going 90 mile north. So all he's got to do is jump in his car when I call him after the show, go 90 mile an hour north, and he'll be there in time. See what I mean?
Well, that's right. He is a West Coast guy, so he's out there in California. So I mean, it's possible he can do it, and I hope he does. I tell you, now I'm going to really be jealous if I miss Jesse and the other people we mentioned, and and using
called planes, bro.
What's that? Yeah, well, I got to tell you another thing that happened yesterday. I don't even want it.
Obamacare.
But Obamacare. Hey, but if you want to just see, I mean, it'd be worth going just to see if Jesse Lee shows up, folks. CSPOA.org. CSPOA.org. And if he does, that alone will be worth any price of admission, which is basically free. And
the admission is $17.76, James.
Yeah. See, I can even afford to come.
$70.76.
Ticket prices like that.
Although we have this little clause that if you really can't afford it, we'll take you anyway. But we're just hoping for $17.76 because it's very iconic and it kind of sets the stage for what you're going to experience at the event, right? So there you go.
It's symbolic. I mean, they're not paying for this event and paying for these speakers to go in off of 1776, but it is symbolic, and you have skin in the game. You feel good about yourself, and it's going to be awesome. But with Obamacare, maybe because they kept the ticket prices so low, you might be able to afford insurance. But I think this is going to be a big problem. I said this last week. This is more so than Trump taking over the Western Hemisphere or any of these other things that are not very popular. Affordability and insurance. We were talking about, Sam, having to go to a Christian health share plan because we can't afford insurance anymore. I loved it when it was a free marketplace. Before Obamacare, I was with Blue Cross Blue Shield. It was reasonably priced. It was certainly more responsive, better insurance. I paid it. I shopped around. I got the insurance that I needed for my family. And then once you had this Obamacare thing, if you didn't take the tax subsidies, it would have been like, $10,000 a month or something crazy. And then, we'll give you these tax write-offs and, we'll get it down to this, that. And then they took that away with the big, beautiful bill. The Republicans didn't renew that. And I'm okay with that because I didn't want it to begin with. However, you can't afford insurance otherwise. So it's a big boondoggle. And but what happened was, now you're telling me in the last segment that they're trying to bring back some of these provisions. But according to their arbitrary calendar, if you didn't renew your insurance in December, you can't buy back in unless you have some sort of a change at home, like your wife gets pregnant or something like that. Actually, we got back in on it the last time my wife was pregnant. We were able to keep it, but you can't get back in if you miss the window. And if you decided to drop your insurance because they were taking away the subsidies, what in the world are you supposed to do even if they bring it back now?
That is one of the great debates. That's something they're going to have to work through. And I'm telling you, they're going to basically be retroactive and say, hey, we're expanding the window so you can get aboard if they do that. Now, here's what's interesting. I don't have Obamacare insurance. Never have. Don't believe in it. Okay. I had private insurance, but I don't know if you know this, but even the private insurance went up a ton with all these adjustments because they're not getting subsidies from Obamacare. Even indirectly, a lot of these companies can't keep the rates the same. And so my insurance went up so much. When it was less than my house payment, I had health insurance. Now that my health insurance plan is more than my house payment, I've had to drop it. I don't have health insurance anymore. But I did go to a health share program like you're talking about, a very good one called Zion's Health and stuff like that. So I now have health share, not health care, or Obamacare, or I should say health insurance. And the terms are all different. Legally, they can't use the same words, so you can't use the term deductible. And I was insurance licensed before, so I know quite a bit about this. But all I'm telling you is the whole thing is different. Instead of dealing with things yearly on health share plans, things are basically focused on an incident, if you will, or an instance of usage. So there's not deductibles. It's different. You pay your share amount. And the point that I'm getting at is it's completely different in the way it's administered. And they've been able to do it a lot cheaper by saying, hey, we don't want people that, promote gay and lesbian agendas because they have, health issues. And we don't want smokers and drinkers and drug users and people who are into illicit sex and all this kind of stuff. They have a lot of Christian strict rules, and that keeps costs down big time, James. And that's really the reason that they're able to exist. But they got back in the 1980s, sorry for the long story here a little bit, but they got this special, eked out spot of health share groups, and it's been going on and doing very well. It's a model that Trump needs to look at, and a way that we could really make a serious difference in healthcare costs outside of, quote, government controlled healthcare. So that's something really, we've got a model that's been in existence for over 40 years. There's a lot of different health share competitors and companies, and they're doing quite well at about, I would say, half to a third of the cost, James.
I cannot imagine any country in the world having a more convoluted and broken healthcare system than us. I mean, yes, obviously healthcare here is very good, but it's unaffordable. And, I'm sure, it'd be worse in Uganda or Kenya or something like that. But I mean, at least, in terms of the service you receive, but I can't imagine even them having a system that is more complicated and hard to navigate than what we've got. It is a huge mess.
You want to know how to make it streamlined and affordable?
Tell me.
Get government out of it. Quick pause. Liberty Roundtable Live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, James Edwards, thepoliticalcesspool.org, and yours truly on your TV and radio. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. Hopefully it's educational and somewhat entertaining. Come on now. Anyway, Obamacare is what do you want to call it? Maybe coming back with a vengeance. It's kind of like the Loch Ness Monster, that you think that sucker's just somehow vanished, and oh boy, it's coming out of the pond once again. It's kind of crazy. I don't know what to think about it, except for we really need to get government out of it. And the problem that I have is the Republicans want their way, the Democrats want their way. It's really no different. Republicans say, we're going to give you a government-controlled bank account called an HSA account, and then we're going to control all the rules and details of how and when you can use it and all this other stuff, and this is way better than the Democrat plan. I just don't want the government to control my money or my health care or my choices, James.
Yes, and they certainly do. And they have basically corralled all of the different insurance providers. I mean, there still is a Cigna and some of these other providers, but they're all under the umbrella of the Obamacare system. And I was interested, and I meant to follow up with this question. You said you had insurance last year. I didn't even know, and based upon what I was able to find out here in the last few years in Tennessee, I didn't even know you could procure private family insurance unless it was either through the marketplace or one of these health share.
Oh, no. They
Collectives.
had outside of the marketplace, they had all kinds of just general insurance, private health insurance plans. And that's what I had. My employer paid part of it. I paid part of it, which I'm against that too. I think that we don't need to tie it to employers. That was the way back in the day the Republicans and Democrats teamed up and said, hey, we got a cap on how much money you can make, but we can give you all these extra fringe benefits to sweeten the pie for employees and everything. And that's how they backed the government-controlled health care in the first place. But I had private insurance, and it was great, and it worked really well, and it was affordable. But I researched my premiums, and they went up 70%, James.
Yeah. Yes. Ours was going to do it. Ours was going to do the same thing, and they all, and especially when you got in with the government, the Obamacare stuff. It was just. You just don't want them. You don't want them meddling. And but my understanding was, yes, you could have private insurance through a business collective. I mean, if your employer had it for a business, but I don't believe, and I could be wrong about this, that individuals could go out and procure insurance unless it was through a company or through the marketplace or through a health share. I mean, if I just went out and called Cigna and said, hey, I want to take your insurance, I couldn't do that.
You gotta have some group designator. You're right about that.
Exactly. Yes. So you did have it through a group, but you couldn't just do it
through a group, and and you can create relatively small groups. The problem is you don't get great rates, and the real problem with healthcare in America is this, James. When I go in and buy a steak, they say, Sam, your steak's $34.95, and I decide I like that price and I buy a steak, or I don't like that price and I don't buy a steak. I buy a hamburger instead, or whatever. The problem with insurance, the problem with healthcare, and the problem with pricing, they don't even know what to charge you. What they've got to do is they've got to basically first look up the government matrix for pricing for everything, aka Medicaid, Medicare kind of pricing, and then they adjust from there based on whatever group rate you've negotiated or the group's negotiated on your behalf, whether that be in your group, whether that be a co-op, whether that be some type of government Obamacare, this or that, and everybody has to negotiate the rates. And so what they've got to do to give you your price on something is they've got to look up what the government price is. They got to look up what your price is. They got to adjust based on whatever code gets approved, because the codes, you can submit 2 different codes. One gives you a better price than another and all this kind of stuff. And then they've got to figure all that out. That's why it takes them forever to bill. And one of the things that they need to do is create transparent pricing in insurance, because then when they say it's going to cost you $14 for an aspirin when you're at the hospital, you're like, no, my wife will be over in about a minute and she's got one in her purse. No, thanks. Okay, they don't want that stuff happening, but this is what needs to occur. You need to get government out of it, and you need to have transparent pricing. And just imagine if you went in and we're going to buy a steak, and they're like, go ahead and buy the steak. We'll send you a bill in a couple of months. Well, hey, listen, it's got to stop. And so we need transparency and accountability, and then we need government out of the center of it all. We don't need to go and check the government, quote, agreed matrix of pricing to determine what everybody else's prices are. But I'm telling you, that's what's done. And that's why they can't tell you how much something costs straight up, because they don't know. They got to go look it all up and figure out the codes and come to an arrival of where in the special privileges you sit, right?
See, here's just one anecdote. A personal anecdote of how bad the system is. So 2 years ago, when we still had it for the kids and my wife and I, and it was like the silver tier. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst. It was good. As far as good is, that's a relative term, but it was through the marketplace. It was through Cigna. So we were at a store, and it was Old Navy, and they had this, basically a concrete slab for a floor. And my little girl, who was 3 at the time, was on my son's back, and she fell and hit her head right on that concrete and had a nosebleed. So, that's concerning. And so just to err on the side of caution, we have insurance, right? This is what you use it for. We never get sick. We never go in. I think this was the first time in 3 years we went to a doctor at all. So we went to the emergency room just to make sure that everything was okay. And, they instantly, no line, no way to the emergency room. I've never been there like that. And they took her back, and we give her insurance card, sign in, immediately goes back. Here's what happened. So she'd fallen. They looked in her eyes with a light, asked her a couple of questions, gave her a popsicle to see if she could keep it down. They said, you know what, honestly, I think she's okay. Everything, looks good that we can tell just by, eyeballing it. If you and we said, okay, well, if that's your opinion, that's what, you're the doctor. They didn't run a CAT scan, no MRI, no test whatsoever. Literally looked in her eye, asked her a couple of questions, gave her a popsicle, sent us home, and everything was fine. But we got a bill, and this is with us having insurance. For that emergency room visit, they did no more than that, which is to say they did nothing at all. And it was at over $1,000. $1,000 with our insurance, which we were paying hundreds of dollars a month for.
That's what insurance does, is it runs you through that because it's a racket. What you need is a DPC. Look in your area for what's called a DPC. That stands for direct primary care. And if you get a DPC, you pay a little bit monthly. Let's say you pay $150 a month. It's your first line of defense. And you can go to the doctor and like you might have a $10 copay or something or nothing, depending on the DPC. And they will basically do a lot of direct primary care stuff for you. They'll do like x-rays and scans and look in their eyes and give people popsicles. And if you need a strep throat test, they'll give you one. And if you need, medication, they can prescribe it and everything else. But it's very inexpensive. And a lot of times they have telemedicine where you can call and talk to a doctor over a video. Oftentimes you can go into their clinics. Where I live, there's 8 clinics in my DPC that I use, and it's like $129 a year for the whole family. $129 a month for the whole family, and we can go to the doctor anytime we need to for pennies, and they get paid to keep you well, not when you come in when you're sick. So they'd love their $129 a month, and they'd love to never see you because they're giving you such great advice and guidance. I'm just telling you, that's the first line of defense. That's the day-to-day nickel and dime stuff that makes you hesitate to go to the doctor because you're afraid of the bills. That stops all that.
Exactly.
DPCs, they're common around the country. I'm telling you, look in your area, that's the answer. Then you get catastrophic insurance, and then all you got's that middle ground that's difficult, and that's where your health share comes in. Anyway, I'm only pretty knowledgeable about this because one, I was insurance licensed, and two, as a IT consultant, sometimes they draft me into special projects. And there was a time when I got involved in special projects to study all this and put together some healthcare plans for companies. And so anyway, I know a little bit about it. And I'm just telling you, that's the gray area, is that middle zone. But if you get a DPC, that'll solve most of your problems, James. That would have cost me $10 to do what you just said. Got a bill for $1,000 for, just so you know.
Yeah, and that's with insurance, and they still charged us that because we hadn't gone in and we hadn't paid anything towards our deductible. So it's just it's outlandish.
Right?
It's outlandish. It is extortion. It's a racket. Insurance is a racket, and I know that we all, myself included, we all get focused on the big picture issues like foreign policy and immigration and things like that. But practically speaking, I mean, really, one of the things the government should be doing is making life livable for the citizens of this country. I mean, just the nuts and bolts, day in, day out life.
For sure. Now, one of the other things that you should know, and your doctor was spot on when they said that, look, if you look into somebody's eyes and their eyes aren't mismatched or dilated, strange, and different things like that, and if you can actually hold food down, which means you're not nauseous and everything else, those two key components will tell you that it can't be that bad. If you can hold food down and you're not nauseous and throwing up, and if your eyes aren't mismatched and way dilated or something else, it says that there cannot be a big underlying problem. There's books out there that really help. When I raised all my kids, one of them is called How to Raise Your Kids in Spite of Your Doctor. And and there's several different books. I can give people titles or whatever, but there's several books that you can literally look up when something's wrong with your kid, and you can take care of things 9 times out of 10 on your own, unless it's very serious. I mean, if you break an arm, you should go get it reset. I'm not saying never go to the doctor. Or if you need something stitched up, hey, if it's beyond what's that glue called?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Shoot. Anyway, whatever that glue is, oftentimes you can just put that. They put that on a
glue instead of stitches. Yeah, they do that now. It's a medical grade.
Yeah, but what's the glue though? You can just use glue over the counter. What's that glue? That's really sticky glue.
I mean, there's Gorilla Glue, Super Glue.
Yeah, Super Glue. Anyway, I believe it or not, I've had plenty of kids that had a pretty good cut, and I had some friends that were nurses and stuff like that, and they're like, dude, just super glue that together.
I mean, look, and also, especially if you're a boy, scars are cool. You can have a scar, not stitch that up. I got a scar above my eye. This was on Christmas Eve one year when I was still living at home. We were playing a Nerf gun war. I jumped up and hit my head on the door frame and had a big gash, but it's Christmas Eve. Anyway, I got a cool scar from it. But yeah, no, listen, I was fine with the doctor just looking in her eyes, giving her a popsicle. I wasn't advocating for him to run any scans, but still $1,000 for that.
The other little trick, just so you know, kids won't eat popsicles if they're really sick. Did you know that?
Nah,
they don't eat a bunch of
yeah.
sticks. You give them a candy bar and they're like, no. Then you know they're really sick, okay? All right, hang tight, ladies and gentlemen. You'll learn a lot raising kids. I'll tell you that right now. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. This is Liberty Roundtable Live. We are syndicated by the Loving Liberty radio networks and TV networks. We're growing, baby. LovingLiberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.